All right. Celeste, so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here and for making the time to talk. It's been, I don't know what the word is to describe what has been going on around us over the last few weeks. It's been a few months in isolation, and I think we've all kind of spent time with family and had time to reflect on what's important to us.
Yeah.
Let's kick off by, and you know, this is supposed to be a conversational, I was thinking last night about, maybe I should have a list of questions for Celeste and, have everything structured to have this conversation. And quite frankly, the conclusion in my mind was there's really no structure to this conversation. It's not once and done, it's an ongoing conversation. So I appreciate you doing this for me. As you know, on Mother's Day this year, I launched a website called The Accidental Ally. And it's to basically talk about my journey on discovering accessibility and advocating for digital experiences to be accessible to all, especially people with disabilities. And you know me for now almost 20 years. And I've had always the desire to do purpose-driven work, and this feels like it comes from the heart, and I like telling stories. So when everything that has been happening around us with the Black Lives Matter movement, what I've noticed is what has been happening in my home. Because that's where you start, right? I mean, as much as you look at what's happening around you at the macro level, you look at what's happening in your home. And what's happening in my home is that my kids are asking me a lot of questions that I don't have answers to. And so the first, I think Sanjay and I have been having a lot of conversations with our children just to kind of unpack their thinking of what is it like to be an Indian American in the US. So I want to ask you some questions today to kind of unpack really what is the perspective of an African American living in the US today. But before we go there, I want to start by asking you, how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm doing well. I think there has been a lot of folks professionally as well as personally that have reached out to me and asked me, how am I doing during, this whole most recent incident of George Floyd being killed at the hands of police officers. And I think it's a good, for me, it feels really good because I think, I don't know what the catalyst is, because this has been going on for so long.
Yes.
Like I think we can't look at like why, or just accept that there is now a dialogue. And there are, there's more people that are really kind of, I guess, just have woken up around, this is a systemic issue around a lot of different things, a lot of inequality around economics. It's a class thing. It's so I'm doing well, and I am super happy that it's very unfortunate that the life of George was taken away, and he and multiple other people that became thousands of people before.
So many that we don't know about.
Yes. But I also am one that feels that, you kind of you have to move forward, and you have to start to solve, to find solutions. The only way you find solutions is you have to have some dialogue.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to know that the dialogue has started, and the dialogue is starting across a lot of different, mothers, young people. My CEO has reached out to me to ask me around, diversity within my own company. So
Mhm.
there's a lot, it's a cross section of people that I think, you know, um, are interested in starting to participate. Not that they weren't participating in the sense that, they didn't have friends and families that cross racial lines, but I think just recognizing that there is a systemic issue within our society culture
Right.
that has to be addressed. And yes, you have to start in your home with
Mhm.
with having an openness and empathy and curiosity around
Mhm.
different cultures, different people, um, and then then there's clearly policies, systemic things that need to be addressed. But
Right.
I'm doing well.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I was thinking back at the first time I met you, and just the history of our relationship, right?
Mhm.
And I've told you this many times. I think the bar was set really high when I graduated out of college, got my master's here, and my first job, my first manager was you. And it was very important for me at that time. This is, almost 20 years ago now, as a brown person, to have a role model such as yourself, that I can look up to, that kind of showed me how to be a professional, and be a woman with a voice to kind of stand up for what you believe in, to be able to kind of communicate logically and respectfully what you stand for.
Mhm.
And we've had many conversations about our diversity, as in my cultural diversity and as well as yours, but we've never really had a conversation about race.
Mhm.
We've talked about our differences. We've talked about embracing each other's cultures. You've gone to India and you've had a fabulous time, and you have lots of Indian friends.
Mhm.
What, but we've never talked about race.
Mhm.
And why do you think that is? And is it important given our current environment now, is it important for us to talk about race? Because I've been struggling with that. Because when I think of you, I think of the woman who set me up for success very early on in my career by role modeling all the qualities that I feel I have today as a professional. But
Mhm.
never once did it occur to me that you were like, I never thought of you as a strong woman because you're black. I think it's a huge part of who you are,
Mhm.
right? Your race is a big part of who you are,
Mhm.
but we never really discussed race. Is it
Mhm.
important to discuss race today with your friends?
Um, for me personally, no. I mean, I think it's important to well, I think yes and no. I think it's important for me with friends to know, for you to feel comfortable reaching out to me and asking me,
Hmm.
hey, can we have a discussion about race, and having the discussion.
Right.
I think it's important for your friends to know that you're an open vessel for learning, for sharing, for that I'm not closed to the discussion. And in the larger context of talking about things that are going on in the world, we can have a discussion about it. Like
Right.
it's like it's not, it exists. It's like, I'm a woman, I'm black, you're, you're an Indian woman, you're, like, you're married, you have kids. It's like, these are all parts of our lives that make
Hmm.
us who we are. And
Hmm.
so, and so just like, um, because of this situation, and awareness, and mobilization around um, so many racial issues in this country, it's important for my friends not to feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
talking to me about race.
Right.
And and so it's yes, it's important to talk about, because I want all of my friends even people that I don't know, like my, my CEO or my chief people officer, feeling comfortable, like, hey, you know, can we talk about how you're doing? And like, people need to not feel like, oh my God, she's, I can't chat with her about that or get her perspective, because I think that's super important. So in a long-winded way, I think it is important to talk about race. I think it's important for us to acknowledge it, acknowledge some of the challenges that we have, and to acknowledge that race does exist, and race does have, sometimes creates bias in people's perspective because of maybe just not being exposed, multiple things. But it's the openness to having the conversation that I think is important.
Sorry, I have to go on mute because there's a little bit of background noise here. So let's talk about race. What does it feel to be a Black American today?
I really don't want to get into a lot of political conversation, because I know this is about race, but I do feel that there is a lot going on in politics where, people, non people of color, white Americans don't, not all. So I don't want to generalize, because some are very aware, but I just, I don't, for me, I feel as a Black American, misunderstood in a lot of ways. It's like misunderstood that I'm a unique Black person, like every Black person is unique. Like, we all don't look the same way. We all don't come from the same background. It's like, I'm a Black woman that comes from a Black family, and I have, all of my unique things, but so does everybody. So do white people. So it's like, I sometimes feel like right now they're, and it's just human nature, right? It's human nature to try and put kind of a bow around, a situation, because you're trying to understand it. And like, having all of these different variables and all of these things makes it hard to understand. But so when I say I'm misunderstood, I'm not misunderstood about anything particular. It's just, I am like every other person in this world that has a unique experience, and one of mine happens to be Black. And yes, I do bring a different perspective based on, walking down the street, and or how people interact with me, and all of those things shape who I am. And so I think what my personal feeling is, until we really are diverse in how we build institutions, how we set policy, how we run companies, how we, like, it's just, you need the voices. It's not like it's like, do people understand that, like, having a diverse set of voices makes a beautiful song? Like, it's a better song.
Yeah.
And that I don't think it's I don't think that's truly understood in the masses of white population. It's like, oh, it's diversity. We need to have some, like, women on the board, Blacks on the board, Latino. It's like, you have a better solution when you have a mixed, you have diverse voices. And so,
Yeah.
so for me, the being misunderstood is, I think, it's not because I'm Black. It's just, it's really, it's lovely in a way that people are trying to understand me, but like, I can't fit in a little box. And like, there is no box for Celeste. Like, Celeste has various different experiences. My brother has a whole host of different experiences, same family, but he's a Black man. So what he's dealt with, what he's experienced is going to be different than I. And so that's the thing. I think it's the harmony of all of those experiences that I think is really where we need to go as a country. And it's not just for Black people, it's for,
Yep.
it's for all people, because class is a major issue too. People that don't have access to high internet or high-speed internet, but now are having to school their kids at home. There's all sorts of issues because people come from all very unique settings.
This is why I'm so deeply passionate about just the inclusion work, right? Because it's not just about racism. It's about, I love how you said all these different diverse voices,
Mm-hmm.
all races, all gender, all sexual orientation, it doesn't matter, right? Abilities, disabilities, doesn't matter. Every voice has something to offer to the symphony, and
Yeah.
it makes a better song. I just love how you said that.
And I also think the main thing is having diversity builds empathy. You start to understand. You might not ever know what it's like to walk in my shoes. I
Yeah.
will never know what it's like to walk in my brother's shoes, but you start to have empathy.
Yes. And how do you do that? How do you do that?
I ultimately, I think when you love and respect people from a host of, when your family
Mm-hmm.
is diverse, when I say family, it's friends, it's work colleagues, it's like friends and community. When your community is diverse, you start to have empathy.
I
Can you?
also think that the way you build empathy, and I think this is where this applies to the work you do, and when you're building products and services for customers, right? You learn this, right, at work, which is you talk to customers, right? You stay connected with customers because you're building what they are using.
Mm-hmm.
The same applies to life, right? When you say empathy, whether it's for your children, your parents, your friends, people who work with you, for you, doesn't matter. The way you build empathy is by engaging,
Yeah.
right? Engaging and reaching out, asking, how are you doing? What can I do for you? How can I help? How do you feel when this happens? I think we've stopped doing that, right? I think we've stopped, somewhere something happened where we stopped engaging beyond just what is necessary. And I think this whole thing that happened with COVID, I don't know about you, but my experience is that I feel I'm more engaged with my family of friends, my family in India, my family across the world, my friends all over the world. I feel I'm more engaged because something about taking away that freedom has given me actually more freedom to reach out and reconnect.
Yes.
I've heard from people I have not heard from in 20 years. Like people have reached out, I've not spoken to them in 15, 20 years. And they've reached out, say, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? How's life? I think we need to do more of that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I don't, the loss of life and the economics and stuff, those are very tragic, but there's been a slowing down because of COVID that I think has been very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And I hope that we retain that. I hope that it helps us with conversations about diversity, inclusion, equality, empathy, all of those things. I hope that part of what happened in COVID is it's like with this situation with Black Lives Matter, it was kind of like the perfect storm out of a tragedy, because
Right.
people are slower, people
Right.
have slowed down, and people are listening, and that is a really, really good thing.
So let me ask you a tough question. This is something that I have struggled with personally, and I would love to hear your perspective. I think the thing about bias, any kind, right, racist or otherwise, is that it's invisible.
Mhm,
It doesn't necessarily, you can't see it walking down the street.
mhm,
It usually disguises itself and it catches you by surprise. And it
mhm,
unfortunately happens in ways that can really diminish your sense of self,
mhm.
even if it is for just a moment. So, given that bias is so invisible, and you and I both have had experiences where we've had people in our inner circle that we thought we could rely on, that we trusted, you know, show up in ways that, you know, showcase their own bias, you know, different kinds of bias. I mean, I've had conversations with my own family where they've made some comments that kind of, it took me by surprise. Like, I didn't know this existed, right? So bias can come up in so many different ways and it's very invisible. How do you deal with bias on a daily basis, whether it's personal, in your personal life or professional?
Mm, that's a good question. I mean, I think as I've gotten older, Gayatri, I have learned to feel very comfortable speaking my mind.
Hmm.
Yeah, you know, not ever being disrespectful or rude, because I think bias comes from ignorance and lack of exposure. But I generally, I am pretty, um, I'm very comfortable letting people know, not that they're wrong, but I don't agree, and or how I feel about a bias that I'm experiencing. Um, and hopefully shed some light on it that gives somebody um, maybe caution or thought. But I think that's just personally how I've dealt with it when it has showed it's when I can see it is in place. But I will say that that's not always been my situation. It's stung me before and like set me back and, you know, made me sad or, you know, just felt misunderstood. And so I think it's a really hard one. I think everyone, especially someone who kind of walks out on the street and, you know, I'm Black. I mean, there's like, so you know, as we get older, our skin gets tougher and we're able to manage those things. But I you know, the worry is always for young people because they don't have the same faculties and and when I remember my experiences with race and bias and really feeling hurt was when I was much younger, when I just couldn't process it, right? It's just, you know, now, you know, I think it's not that it doesn't bother me, but like, you know, it's a little bit water off of a duck's back. I speak my mind, I move on. You know kind of where people stand, and it's not that I'm not open for them changing their bias,
Yeah.
but you know, I think you also kind of put a little arm's length distance
Yeah.
between someone and a bias that they might have around me being a Black woman and or just Black. And so I just it's a hard kind of strict, you know, question to answer with just one definitive way. But I think it's I'm much more able to stand my ground now. um, and but I just don't suffer fools the way I did before. Or
Yeah.
when I say that, like trying to gain, you know, some type of um, them liking me or understanding I'm different, or it's like, no, it's not, Celeste, it's not your problem.
Yeah.
It's not your problem. This is their problem. And not in a blame way, but you should be open to try and correcting them, but also you need to move on. Like, you know, so I think, I think that the real sadness for me is, yeah, young people that just, we need to give them the tools and the voice so
Mhm.
that they can navigate race
Right.
in an easier way than their generations before
Right.
them.
And let's talk about young people, because I have two more questions before we wrap up.
Mhm.
I'm raising two young people, and you know my children, right? And my daughter is a teenager now, and has been deeply affected by what's happening around her. She has friends of all races, right? Very close friendships with, um, you know, children who are African American, who raised in, mixed families, and we live in an area where there's just all kinds of people from
Right.
all different countries. So for them, they view race very differently, right? They acknowledge that they're different, but they embrace each other's differences. So when your children come to you and say, but how can they kill this person? How can they, why? And you don't have the answers to why, right? But what we have done for especially for our daughter, is we've asked her to explore it on her own, ask the questions, explore the tough conversations, and she's been very interested and willing in actually doing something about it. So she's doing this GoFundMe and raising money, and she's exceeded her. So it's starting to feel like it's coming from a place of honesty and truth. What else can we do for our young people? And I really believe that a lot about racism has to be addressed at home, right? What you tell your children, the kinds of conversations you have at home, how you view people of different races and how you talk about them, right? Whether it's in front of your kids or behind their back, it doesn't matter, but it has to start at home.
Mm-hmm.
What else can we do for our young people, Celeste, from your perspective?
From my perspective, Gayatri, just what you've said around your two kids having a group of friends and being exposed to diversity. I think that's the greatest gift we can give our kids. It's the greatest gift we can give our kids, to have them be curious about cultures, have them be curious about food and different. It's like it's because then it's not it's normal.
Yeah.
I mean, I can honestly say, like, for me, my mom and dad had friends of every race, color, sexuality. It was how I grew up. So it was like, I love different people that look different from me from a very early age. And certainly I have my own biases. I still need, I still learn, all of those things, but I think it starts from just exposure and having friends, community, work colleagues that are diverse. Then I think that solves so much. I really do. And you're exposing both of your children to a diverse population is the greatest gift you can give them. It really is.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So, my one of my favorite memories of you is when we had a tough situation, you would say, "Guys, it's time to bust it out. Let's rally." And for an Indian person who had been in the US only a few years, like, I loved the language you used because it was always so forward thinking and positive and upbeat, right? And I had never heard the phrase "bust it out," like before you mentioned it, or "let's rally," right? So if we were to apply the same thing, and I use it all the time with kids, like my kids are like, what does that um, but the thing, if we were to apply that here, right? I have a t-shirt that says, don't just talk about it, be about it. So how do we do this together, Celeste? How do we go beyond conversations?
Gayatri, you're doing it. You're busting out. You are doing something that is impacting young people. It's providing young people access to tools, educate, like, you're walking the talk. I applaud you 100%. And I think it's, for me, it's the things that you're doing, and the education and the exposure that you're giving your children, that that is that's a lot, Gayatri. It's it's a huge, it's going to be hugely impactful. So I just want to support you, follow you, contribute in any way you need me to. But I also want you to know, like, you're an ally, and you are doing a lot to help just expose people to opportunities to also become an ally. And I really I applaud you, and I think focus on those areas. Continue to reach out to your network.
Yeah.
Continue to reach out to me.
Yeah.
And I think there's not, everyone can't be a leader. You clearly are a leader. You act, you move, you mobilize. And, like I said, not everyone can do that. And so try and harness people that might not be able to mobilize the same way you can to then follow you and support you.
Right.
And I, I,
Thank
I,
you.
I really, I'm super proud of you and all the things that you've done. You're a beautiful family. It's wonderful, Gayatri, to have known you over the years and just really seen you just become a force. And you are a
I
force.
appreciate you saying that. Celeste, I really wanna thank you for this conversation.
You're welcome.
And I wanna say, as a Black woman, as an African American, as a force to reckon with, I see you, I stand with you, and I appreciate your kind words and the support that you've extended by having this conversation, and by sometimes it's just nice when somebody says, you know what, keep doing what you're doing.
Keep doing it.
So thank you for that. But I think that there is something I've realized because of what's happening around us, is that I think that I am deeply, deeply, deeply fortunate that you were my first ever manager, because you set the bar really high for me. And I mean that with all my heart, because I show up today as a professional because of you. The way I show up today is because of you, because you showed me very early on, I mean, literally my first job, right? My first day, first job, you showed me what it's like to be a woman in the professional setting. And I show up, in the professional setting as a strong, vocal, opinionated, respectful woman because of that. And when my children see me like that, I think it influences them in only positive ways.
Yes.
So I thank you for that. I don't know if I've ever thanked you enough, but you really set the foundation. And this is, again, like I said, this is not a once and done kind of a conversation. I'm reaching out to my network. I was very fortunate to work with so many people who have influenced me. And now that because of all the race conversations, you realize, wow, I've actually worked with quite a few Black people, so I should reach out and have that conversation. So I appreciate you doing this again, and I hope you have a great day. Always great to see you, and hopefully we get to see each other again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Gayatri.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.